Stories, Philippines podcast.
The darkness gathers not just in the forgotten corners of old houses, but in the deep, echoing chambers of history itself. It is a thing built of blood and trauma, a shadow that never fully dissipates even when the sun shines brightest. You can feel it when you walk down a street named after an old family, or when you stand on ground where thousands of final breaths were taken. It is the feeling that something immense and terrible once happened here, and that the echoes of that suffering have sunk into the very soil, refusing to be washed clean. The human memory is a brittle, flawed thing, but the memory of a place is fixed and endless. It simply waits. A darkness permeates this episode, touching on scenes and themes some may find profoundly disturbing. Listen with necessary caution. I am Paul, and you are listening to Stories Philippines podcast. This is the first part of our special for Halloween 2025. We are going deep into the darkness that stains the most famous haunted places in the Philippines and around the world. The heavy, unshakable energy that comes not from mere ghost stories, but from foundational tragedies. Consider for a moment the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines. The shell of it sits atop Dominican Hill, overlooking the chill, misty expanse of the mountain city. It is a monumental ruin, a sprawling stone specter with gaping windows like empty eye sockets staring out into the fog. It was built in the 1900s as a rest house for Dominican priests and nuns, a serene retreat high in the Cordillera Mountains. Imagine the quiet piety, the crisp, clean air, the sense of spiritual refuge. But that was before the earth turned to ash and the world broke. During the Second World War, as the conflict reached its final, most brutal phases, the serene retreat became a desperate refuge. People fled there, seeking sanctuary behind its sturdy walls from the savage fighting that engulfed the city. Then, the Japanese Imperial Army took it over. The calm, cool hallways of the former monastery were transformed into a garrison, a place of unspeakable interrogation and execution. The stories say that priests and nuns who sheltered there were massacred. Civilians seeking safety were tortured and killed. The hotel was bombed during the subsequent liberation of the city, completing its transformation from a holy house to a hollow tomb. When the building was later converted into a hotel, they tried to bury the past beneath plaster and fresh paint, but the earth does not forget. Guests and staff started reporting things: the disembodied sound of a baby crying near the old fountain, the distinct, chilling sight of a headless priest or a white-clad nun walking the corridors, the rattling of doorknobs on rooms long since padlocked. These are not vague, misty encounters. They are violent, emotional echoes of a specific, massive trauma, the suffering of hundreds of souls trapped in a stone cage on a cold hill. The place eventually closed its doors for good in the 1987 after the death of the last owner. The energy, it seems, was simply too much for the living to bear. This pattern of a beautiful place corrupted by historical violence is not unique to the Philippines. Travel across the Pacific to the American city of New Orleans, Louisiana, and you will find similar stains on the beautiful old architecture of the French Quarter. Take the Lalaurie Mansion, a breathtaking house on Royal Street. On the surface, it is one of the grandest examples of New Orleans' opulent style. But beneath the surface, it is famous for the dark deeds committed there in the 1830s by Madame Delphine Lalaurie. A respected socialite, she was eventually discovered to be torturing and mutilating her slaves in the attic. A fire revealed her dungeon of horrors. When the locals stormed the house, she fled and was never captured. The subsequent occupants of the house have all reported things: screams, the clanking of chains, the shadowy figures of the tormented enslaved people. Just like the Diplomat Hotel, The beauty of the facade conceals a past so dark that the air inside is heavy with the static of pain. The world over, the places that hold the most persistent hauntings are not random. They are anchors of collective tragedy. Think of the Tower of London in England, a majestic fortress on the Thames River. It has served as a royal palace and an armory, but its true reputation is as a prison and an execution site. For centuries, high-profile figures, queens, nobles, traders, met their brutal end within its walls. The most famous story, of course, belongs to the young princes in the tower, the boys who disappeared in the late 1400s, presumably murdered to secure the throne for their uncle, Richard III. Witnesses still claim to see their small, pale figures wandering hand in hand through the bloody tower. The raw material of these hauntings is not superstition, it is the deliberate, calculated infliction of human suffering. In the Philippines, the weight of history is particularly felt at places like Fort Santiago in Intramuros, the ancient walled city of Manila. For over 300 years, this Spanish stone fortress was the dark heart of colonial power. Its dungeons, its stone cells, and its narrow passages are saturated with the memory of thousands who were imprisoned, tortured, and killed within its walls. From Filipino revolutionaries fighting for independence to American and Filipino prisoners of war during the Second World War, the fort's grounds have been an epicenter of anguish. When you walk through the low, damp entrance to the dungeons, you can feel the sudden, unnerving drop in temperature, the oppressive silence that somehow screams of terror. The dark history of this fort mirrors the story of a place like Alcatraz Island in San Francisco Bay, California. The island itself, a rock formation subject to cold winds and isolated by strong currents, became a federal prison in the 1930s, designed to be inescapable. Like Fort Santiago, it was not merely a holding place but a psychological tool. The constant sense of surveillance, the bone-chilling isolation, and the despair of the most hardened criminals meant that even the living were already half ghosts. Guards and tourists alike often report the smell of cigar smoke in cells where nobody is smoking, or the sound of cell doors slamming shut in the silent, abandoned blocks. The lingering darkness of both places is the product of concentrated human despair. There are memorials built of stone and suffering. The collective Filipino belief in the persistence of the spirit, what is called the muto or the wandering soul, gives these places an even sharper resonance. Long before the arrival of the Spanish and their Catholic concepts of heaven and purgatory, indigenous beliefs held that the spirit, the kaluluwa, lingered on earth, often inhabiting natural objects or sacred places. When Christianity arrived, this ancient belief merged with the Catholic concept of a soul in need of prayer or unresolved peace, the alma en peña. The ghosts that haunt Fort Santiago or the Diplomat Hotel are not just generic shadows. They are, in the minds of many Filipinos, souls violently torn from their earthly bodies, unable to find the passage to the next life because their stories remain unfinished. Their suffering demands recognition. In the mountains of Baguio, where the Diplomat Hotel sits, there is another location woven into the fabric of the city's spectral reputation: Teachers' Camp. It was established in the 1900s as a retreat and training center for American and Filipino teachers, a place dedicated to learning and rest. Yet, it also became a site of tragedy. Like many places in the mountains, the ground it sits on was a point of conflict, a sacred space interrupted by colonial ambition and then shattered by war. The stories told by teachers and students who have stayed there over the years are legion. The white lady who walks the length of a certain hallway, the soldier in an old uniform standing silently in the corner of a cottage, the chilling sound of crying children in the dead of night. The folklore suggests a dark parallel found even in European ghost stories. The famous White Lady found haunting Teachers' Camp or the notorious Balete Drive in Quezon City is often linked to an act of violent injustice. A young woman raped and murdered, a person killed in a car accident, a victim of the war. This figure is essentially the Filipino counterpart of the Dama Blanca of Spain, or the Weeping Woman, the La Llorona of Mexican and Latin American lore. All these stories tell of a woman who experienced profound, devastating tragedy, often at the hands of a cruel man or a terrible circumstance, and whose soul is forever fixed to the place of her suffering, forever weeping, forever searching. The haunting is a permanent act of protest. In places like Balete Drive, the very environment amplifies the fear. The road itself is lined with enormous, centuries-old balete trees. In Filipino folklore, these trees are not just plants, they are dwelling places for supernatural beings. The encanto, the capre, the duende. They are portals to another Ahintan hidden world. When the White Lady appears on this poorly lit road, she is not only the ghost of a tragic victim, but a creature whose power is enhanced by the ancient, untamed spirit of the giant tree she is said to reside in. It is a confluence of trauma and ancient, potent magic. The fear is not just of the ghost, but of the raw, primal power of the wilderness itself, now encroaching on the urban edge. This same blending of trauma and folklore is found in the story of the Manila Film Center, an ambitious, ill-fated project on the shores of Manila Bay. It was built quickly in the early 1980s to host an international film festival. The construction was notoriously rushed, and tragedy struck when the scaffolding collapsed, sending workers plummeting into quick-drying cement. Reports, though often debated, suggested that nearly 170 workers were killed, and to keep the construction schedule on track, security forces allegedly sealed the site and ordered the work to continue, essentially entombing the dead within the structure's foundation. The film center has been largely abandoned and stands as a modern monument to political overreach and human sacrifice. The darkness here is a specific metallic coldness, the feel of new cement and fresh blood. People who have ventured inside report the constant presence of unseen figures, the sounds of scratching, moaning, and hammering coming from the walls, the trapped souls trying to claw their way free. It is a haunting born of a shocking, deliberate disregard for human life. Its power comes from the feeling that the structure itself is an active tomb, the remains of the dead acting as the very bones of the building. The deep connection between human tragedy and hauntings suggests something profound about our psychology. When faced with an overwhelming event, a massacre, a mass death, a concentrated act of cruelty, the human mind struggles to process the sheer scale of the horror. It needs an explanation that goes beyond simple chance or human evil. By personifying the remaining suffering into a recognizable ghost or a recurring phenomenon, we give it a narrative. We transform the incomprehensible historical trauma into a comprehensible, if terrifying, story. We create a spectral warden, a ghost, to guard the site of the tragedy, forever ensuring that the story is not forgotten. The ghost becomes the memory. Globally, this transformation of trauma into terror is visible everywhere. In Cambodia, the killing fields are not haunted by white ladies, but by an oppressive, profound silence, the sheer weight of millions of murdered innocents. In the city of Auschwitz, Poland, the remnants of the concentration camp complex are quiet, yet visitors often report a crushing sense of despair, a heaviness in the air that is more unsettling than any scream. These places are haunted not by an individual ghost, but by a massive collective wound. We are drawn to these haunted places, both in the Philippines and abroad, because they are places where the veil is thin. They offer us a chance to touch the raw edge of history, to feel the emotional echo of a time that must never be forgotten. They are morbid tourism, yes, but they are also spontaneous memorials, places where the living go to pay a kind of fearful respect to the unquiet dead. They remind us that some pains are too sharp to fade, and some stories are too terrible to ever truly end. The shadows that cling to these structures are not just figments of imagination. They are the stories etched in stone and wood, passed down in whispers across generations. If you have a story of a place that holds such deep traumatic energy, a personal encounter that defies easy explanation, we want to hear it. Submit your stories to our email, storiesphpodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. The enduring mystery is not if these places are haunted, but why we allow ourselves to build such monuments to darkness, and why the cost of that darkness is always paid by the innocent. The ghosts of the Diplomat Hotel, the White Lady of Balete Drive, the unseen hands that scratch the walls of the film center, they are all calling out with the same voice, demanding that we remember the violence that birthed them. Find show notes and support options in the description. Access exclusive content on Patreon for deeper dives into the history and folklore that shape these stories. Follow us on social media for daily folklore facts. As the nights grow longer and the shadows deepen this Halloween season, consider this. What happens to a soul when it is taken with such violence and such disregard? Is it possible for a place to truly cleanse itself of blood once the foundation has absorbed it? Perhaps the only thing more chilling than the thought of a ghost is the thought of a history that refuses to die. We will continue our special next time with a look at the folklore that underpins these stories, the ancient beliefs that give the Filipino haunting its unique and terrifying character. Do not forget to like, subscribe, follow, and share this podcast. Support the podcast financially in ways you can find in the show notes.